Hello everyone, welcome to the Music Masterclass. This is Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore, and today we're trying something that I hope will become kind of a regular feature here. I'll be taking a look at a score by Dean Hamill, and we have him here, if all is going well. Hopefully you can see him as well and hear him when he begins talking, and I look forward to digging into his piece and in that day, and talking about what's going on with it, what we can all learn from it. So, without further ado, let me first make sure that we're good. Dean, are you with us?
I am with you. I hope you can hear me.
All right, good. So everyone, be sure to just let us know if we're having any technical problems that we need to know about by letting us know in the chat. But I'm going to kind of assume that things are working. So, what is the music that I have on the opening page before the theme music? That's a good question. Oh, I know what you mean. The picture that's actually the kind of static picture that's just the icon for the class. I believe it is from Sonata Pathétique, Beethoven. I think that's what it is. But I'd have to look at it again and remind myself for sure. Okay, so let me, for people who are just joining us for the first time, welcome. This is something we do every Thursday, and I take some piece or pieces written by some of you and kind of critique, give my feedback, and we all try to learn from them. And today, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at a piece by Dean, and so I'm going to give him the floor now to actually talk a little bit about the piece before I play it for you, and then I will play it, and then we'll start talking about it. So that said, Dean, what do you want to tell us about your piece here?
Well, just a few things. I prefer writing for choral groups, sometimes solos or duets. I don't feel like I'm really a strong instrumental writer, but words kind of turn me on and get my imagination moving. And so this particular text from Isaiah 12 attracted me probably 2 decades ago, and for a long time I wanted to set it to music, and so I did that last month at long last. And so I'm excited to share it with people and have them make comments and constructive criticism. So that's basically it. It's a piece for choir. It will take 8 voices. And of course, piano accompaniment. There's some a cappella sections. I almost always, not almost always include an a cappella section in my writing. And I guess that's probably enough to get us started, Mark.
Okay, so I'm getting feedback that there's feedback that in your voice. So I'm looking here to see, because I don't hear it in my microphone. But what I'm going to do, it's always something, right? Can I hit that?
I just turned down my speaker volume a little bit. I don't know if that's the problem, but I just turned down my speaker volume a little bit. I don't know if that'll help.
It might, and you might also try putting headphones on, if you got some. But if not, then I will
let me
find some. Meanwhile, I'm going to go play the music. And
turn on my Bluetooth here. Take a moment.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and play the music so we can hear the piece. It's a fantastic piece. I didn't really say welcome, but welcome, Dean. And thank you for being the guinea pig on doing this whole thing here. So I'm going to play the piece. It's like 4 minutes long, and it's just a marvelous piece, and I'm really looking forward to talking about it. So here, actually, I'm going to go ahead and mute your microphone temporarily. And here we go. Yeah, Dean. Yeah. That is going to be absolutely glorious to hear performed, which I hope it is. I got to get your mic unmuted here. Give me one moment. All right. Dean, you have headphones on now?
Thank you.
So, Dean, can you try...
Okay, am I back?
Yes, you are back, and try to say a few things so we can find out if your audio is any better.
Okay. One thing, I could not hear the playback. Hopefully everybody else could, but there was no, with our connection, I didn't hear the playback. Just, I don't need to, I know what it sounds like. But, so is my sound better?
So that's the question from people. So everyone could definitely hear the playback because we're getting comments about that. The question is whether Dean's voice is working any better. So let us know in the comments. It'll take a couple seconds before I see them here. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start kind of going over parts of it to talk about, things that I think are worth talking about. But are there any questions that you would want to ask me that you would want to make sure that I talk about, and I will make notes to make sure that I do that. Dean.
Well, yeah. So excuse me. So in the let's see, let me find that section. The accompaniment. Starting at measure 13. I was a little bit of a loss what to do there. So I just had some arpeggiated chords or broken chords for the few measures there. And I guess that's effective. But always up for help with something. By the way, so there's a 4-bar introduction, but the music is totally unrelated to everything that comes thereafter. It just sets the tone, and I like it. But if anybody's looking for some connection to what comes after, there's nothing. I just tried to write something that I thought was beautiful. And I'm a little concerned about the having been a guitarist. I actually graduated many years ago in classical guitar performance. So I have this tendency to show strumming in essence. And so in the first measure and the third measure and the fourth measure, I've got these broken chords, arpeggiated chords. And I'm wondering if that's distracting or if it's okay, or if it's just that's what I do, and people have to live with it.
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of pause you there. So the feedback is unfortunately that the sound isn't better, but I just tried changing a couple of things that might help. So we'll see. Actually, yeah, we're just going to have to keep trying. And so what I'm going to do, Dean, is try to get ask you questions with kind of short answers, so then I can just sort of repeat your answer for people so they can hear it better. But yeah, I guess we'll see.
Okay.
So yeah, because I guess I'm just not sure what's actually going on here. So all right, so I want to address a couple things that you just talked about, and then I'm just going to talk about my own thing. So first of all, you talk about the introduction not being related, but I'm not following that. This is basically the melody, right?
No,
I mean, not exactly, but it's...
No, I don't think so.
Well, it's not the melody, but let me
Yeah. Well, the second, for instance, the second measure and the sixth measure are certainly related.
Right. So this, but I mean, okay. So here's what I hear. It's an E flat chord going to C minor with that 9 coming to 8, or 2 going to 1. Well, that's this melody right here. It's this exact same melody rhythmically. It's just different pitches, right? So instead of an ascending line into that suspension, it's a descending. Oops, sorry, I need to turn on my screen share sound again, because that's what I thought was going to maybe help with your voice. So yeah, to me, this measure here is so similar to this that it's barely worth commenting on the difference. It's, yeah, same rhythm, same chord structure, and a same resolution, the last few notes of the melody. So to me, it relates really perfectly. Yeah. So anyhow, that is my feedback there. Now, as far as what you were talking about not feeling comfortable with writing instrumentally and writing for piano in particular, the things that I would say here are the piano part is not difficult conceptually, but there are things about the writing of it that are making it maybe harder than it needs to be. Like this arpeggio here in the left hand is much harder than it has any right to be. If after I've played that octave from E flat, low E flat to the high E flat, and then having to jump my hand up to the D, it's much more work to play this than if it were just simply this, right? And okay, if you want the low note, give me the low note, but then let my hand stay. So I'll play the low note, then jump my hand up, and then keep my hand in that position. What you don't want to have to do too much of is changing hand positions. You want to set your hand and then wiggle the fingers. That's the way you write easy music. Now, not that all the music has to be easy, but as said, I think for the effect you're going for, some portions are unnecessarily difficult. So the other thing that I will say about that also is often once you've set up a pattern, the more you can keep to that same pattern, the easier it is kind of mentally. So like you've got this pattern going of chord in the right hand, chord, then low note, chord, low note, chord, low note, chord, low note, right? So as long as you keep that pattern going, you're good. But then there's certain places where, let me check my notes and see where I said this was. Measures 4 to 5. Oh, yeah. Well, that's actually not a good example, but it's if I find places where it feels like the pattern is being changed up for interest or variety, okay, that's an okay thing. But you want to, if it's accompaniment, it's okay to be boring a little bit. So as we come across places where that's an issue, I will point them out. So once again, everyone, I will apologize for the sound is beautiful in my headphones, but apparently it's not going out that way through YouTube, and I don't know why. And so just bear with us is all I can say, and I'll try to translate any of Dean's comments here. All right. So what I want to do though is jump into some of my comments about the beginning that I had already written down for myself. A couple of them are going to be general comments. I see you've written in like chord symbols in different places, and then you stopped doing that or you made them invisible. And I guess maybe they're there more for your benefit than anyone else's. But I will say they're not necessarily always accurate. And so as a pianist, I would love to have the chord symbols in there because I would feel like I might want to, kind of create some of my own accompaniment, using yours as a guide. And I would use the chord symbols, but then I would need them to be more accurate or more standard. Like this chord here, C major flat 6. Okay, this chord is technically that is what that chord is. It is a C major chord. It has an A flat that's a flat 6, but conceptually, it's a C7 chord. Whether or not you voiced it with the B flat or not, it's a C7 chord with a flat 13. So that's how I would call it, C7 flat 13. Your voicing might not happen to have a B flat in it, but for me, it is functioning as C7. It's secondary dominant going to the F minor. So there's things like that. There's also a few places where you've just mislabeled a chord, like major versus minor. I'd have to turn the invisible chord symbols back on in order for people to see that. Well, they're in there somewhere, I know. Anyhow, so there's that. But yeah, I like the introduction. My only comment about the introduction, really, that I would like think about in the sense of changing anything, there were two things. One is you've established that you're going to be using major sevenths, that you're going to be using color tones like that very prominent ninth, this like, right? This is a very colorful, in, you know, sort of a modern sort of sensibility. It doesn't sound like how Bach would have written it. It sounds like how someone in the last century would have written it. And you've got that ninth in the melody. You've got the ninth and the 11th here in the passing motion here. You've got this ninth on this chord. You've got all this color going, but and when the choir comes in, it's the same thing, right? When you've got these sections here, you've got ninths and color tones galore. It makes chords like this one stand out as, oh, well, that one's vanilla. So I'd much rather see a ninth on that chord too, for that sort of consistency of color. There's certain cases where you can get away with a chord that has no color tones after everything else has, when you're trying to make a specific effect, but I don't feel like this was one of them. I feel like this is a case where that's a freebie. You could totally have replaced that root with a ninth, and it would have just been an improvement all around. And the other thing is, I felt like one, two, three, four is how I would have heard that going. In other words, I hear this as a 2/4 measure, and then this as the start of another 4/4 measure. And I was going to say, well, don't be afraid to do that sort of thing. But then I see that you do that sort of thing all over the place later on. So don't be afraid to do it right from the very beginning. I feel like it actually would have wanted that. So those are my comments about that introduction, and you know, a lot of that comment will carry through to other stuff. I want to check again and look at the chat. I don't see further comments in there. Dean, again, we have no reason to expect it's going to sound any better, but I'm going to turn off my screen share because that might be relevant. And I'm going to see, again, if you want to try to say a few words before I go on.
Okay. Sure. So I'll say just a few words. Is that enough words to see how it sounds?
It is, but it'll be a delay before people are able to say whether it helped or not, any of the things that I've tried setting up. But if you want to respond to the comments that I just gave before I go on, this would be a great time.
And I'm getting a delay also, and it's
okay.
Sure. And I have a delay also, and so we're kind of talking over a little bit each other. I'm watching you, and you know, your mouth's moving, and I'm not hearing anything, and you know, it's like an old dubbed foreign language dubbed movie sort of. So we'll just have to kind of do the best we can, I guess.
I've been talking. Okay, sorry about that. I muted myself, which was a big mistake, but now I'm back. Okay, so and nothing that I said was all that important. So I'm not gonna keep talking. What I think I'm gonna do then, since we're having issues involving when you're talking, I'm just gonna keep giving feedback, and you can kind of sit there and nod, and then we'll come back and feel free to type into the chat, Dean, and if you've got other questions, and yeah, we'll just see. But I don't know. I feel like actually, Dean. Yeah, I don't know. I got to hit this update stream button again. Hopefully, I'm making sound. I'm back. Good. All right. Good. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep giving some feedback about some things, and then we'll return to trying to converse and see if we can get anywhere. All right. So I'm just going to start jumping through a little bit more quickly through some stuff because they're mostly small points of things that I think are really interesting, either opportunities for other people to learn or other opportunities to change some things. Some of them are purely notational. Like here, I don't know. I understand in choral music things can be different, but just know that in general, if you have a slur into a tied note, the normal correct thing to do is the slur should extend to the end of the tie. Now, this rule is sometimes relaxed in choral music because it causes the slur to get bigger and starts to interfere with the lyrics. Mm-hmm. So, take that with a grain of salt, but just know that for most people's benefit, that is a general rule of thumb, that slurs continue to the end of a tie. Then I want to jump ahead a little bit now to a place that you were asking about here, where you just had the chords, the piano, switch to half notes. Why? I thought that was actually very effective. I like the idea of color change. And so you've had this moving eighth note line in the piano part, right? Ding, 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 going on and on and on like that. And let me just flip over the comments on here. You don't see headphones on Dean's head, but that's because he's got Bluetooth earbuds in, I think. Now, it's possible wired headphones would behave better. I have found that to be true when I'm doing these broadcasts, that the Bluetooth creates its own weird artifacts where the pitch is off by a half step or something. Anyhow, so you've had all these moving eighth notes, and then the texture changes here, which is nice. Now, what I would say is it's not as big a change as you might have wanted, because the choir is still doing the same thing. The voices are still eighth notes, still in full, thick voicings. So the only thing that's changed is the piano part. Had the voices also done something more notably different there, that might have made a bigger impact. But I don't know that you needed a giant impact unless you wanted to do some like real word painting on the word angry. Word painting is the idea of, doing something in the music that reflects the lyric. You do that sort of thing, not that like, this melody goes up, this melody goes down, right? That's like extreme word painting. But there's also just, we're talking about gentle things versus we're talking about angry things, and so you can do things with dynamics to convey the mood of something without talking about specific words. And I feel like this passage, there's a change up there from the piano part, but is it as fully conveying anger? I don't know. Maybe there's more you could do. Maybe you don't want to because the anger is being turned away. That's a choice for you to make there. But I like those changes. And then I love how we go into, right, this contrapuntal section. right? So it's building the texture. It starts off with just a single voice, and then it's a three voices, um, a three-part harmony, expands to four-part harmony, then it's four-part harmony with the fifth voice on top, right? So it's building in the complexity. You could probably build even more by having yet another part layer in there if you wanted. But yeah, that kind of texture change is great. It's exactly, the kind of thing you want to be doing to set this sort of thing to music in this style. All right. This last chord, I want to talk about a couple harmonic things. So one of them is, those of you who have listened to me talk for more than about 5 minutes have heard me talk about minor four chords. Here's a beautiful example. We're in the key of E flat. That's this minor four chord, an A flat minor chord. Technically, okay, it's instead of a minor four chord, it's a half diminished two chord. It's F minor 7 flat 5. It's the same basic chord though. What I would say about it is it's voiced very richly, and it's not a problem. I like it coming from a jazz perspective, but you might want to think about, like when I talked about there being places where you can get away with not having color tones, I don't know that G natural did you any favors there, and that I might consider losing it. And let's hear that.
Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Mark, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The screen I'm looking at is so small I can't tell what measure you're in right now.
I see. I am.
You were talking about the G natural or G sharp.
Gotcha. I am in measure 14. So this is all I did is change on the
14. Thank you. Okay.
The downbeat of the chord, and I'm going to turn your microphone down because suddenly it got louder. Also, and since people aren't happy with its sound anyhow, I'm turning it down. Okay, so I'm looking at measure 14, where you have F minor 7 flat 5 as how you've notated the chord symbol, and the G would have been a ninth. It would have been the only color tone. But it's a fine color tone, but somehow the voicing was feeling a little dissonant. And for my money, first of all, I don't think of that as F minor 7 flat 5. I think of it as A flat minor 6, in which case the F already is our color tone. And I don't know that it needed both color tones, but I like the way I've kind of done it here, zooming in, where on the downbeat, instead of an A flat, I have an E flat. Actually, I don't even remember what the original was here. Oh, I guess, yeah, the A flat you had there, you had the G up here. So all I did was, yeah, I don't remember exactly what I changed it to, but just by getting rid of the G in the accompaniment and there, I felt like it was a little stronger. Or a little less, although again, if you're trying to talk about the word angry, that bit of bitingness to that slight dissonance there, maybe that helps with that. In any case, there's one of those chords, and you're using it effectively other places also. This chord here in measure 22, this does one of the things they tell you not to do. They not being me. It's basically a B flat 7 chord, okay, a 9 chord, maybe a B flat, D, F, A flat, and then C is the ninth, and then you have a fourth in the chord, E flat. Usually they'll say, oh yeah, fourths are great, but if you're going to do that, omit the third. Well, this is, I think, a lovely sound. I think it's a highly underrated sound. The sound of a chord that has both the fourth and the third, usually in exactly that kind of position, with the third prominent on top of the voicing, the fourth somewhere kind of in a tenory kind of range. And so this, to me, is a beautiful example of why the idea of omitting the third just because you're using a fourth is overrated. Yeah, suspensions are cool and they're fine to use, but it's actually fine to have both notes in there, and that chord is a lovely, lovely example of it, I think. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going since then we don't have to worry too much about you. And Dean, hopefully you're just taking some notes, and we can maybe address. We'll maybe continue the conversation more on the community later. But because I want to keep moving through some other things here. What did I say? Moving notes, measure 16. I got to remember what my comment was. Oh yeah, that was just the idea that you switched to the half notes. I liked it. There's a thing that can happen like in passages like this, where your top melody is moving, but the bottom notes are staying the same because the chord hasn't changed, and that's okay. Sometimes there are techniques for not doing that. There are techniques for harmonizing this measure in such a way that the chords move on every beat without going anywhere. In other words, instead of just having a C minor chord throughout, that A flat I can harmonize just temporarily with a diminished chord. And that way there was some motion. So
instead of screen again for details, because I have a hard time seeing it.
Measure 13.
Thank you.
Measure 13. So measure 13, the tenor and bass, whatever the bottom two voices were originally static. It was da 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 and da 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 while the melody moved. And that's an okay texture. There's nothing wrong with that texture, but know that there's another option. When the melody is moving stepwise like this, there's a technique in which you basically alternate the main chord with a secondary diminished chord. So instead of sticking with C minor, you harmonize the melody using alternating C minor and B diminished. So the A flat and the F are already part of B diminished, but then I just changed that C to a D, the B flat to a B natural, and now I have, and suddenly no one has a static line anymore. The tenor is, this third voice is da 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 dum, and this voice is da da dum. And you could even change this to a C just to avoid that little bit of staticness. Da 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 dum. Just to avoid as much repetition in the voices. There's a fine line to kind of straddle how much you want to take advantage of common tones versus when does it start to feel repetitive, and when does it feel like adding those sorts of passing chords would create some extra interest. So that's the kind of passage you might want to look for there. So most of the things that I've talked about here are detail-oriented things that, then we could look at the same details in a lot of other places. Most of the rest of the stuff that I would talk about, though, is more big picture kinds of things about how the whole piece is put together. But not entirely. There's some other details to talk about. One is just that general idea that when the piano went to half notes, the voices were kind of still doing the same thing. It's really nice to have a texture in which one part is static while the other part is moving. So either moving piano part while the voices are moving slowly, or vice versa. That is a texture you don't really have in this piece. Not that you would have to, but just know that that's, a thing also. There can be places where you're, instead of behold God is my, it could be behold God is my, drawing that out more to let the piano part move more underneath it. It's moving a little underneath here. So that's creating some motion under there, and that could be brought out that much more. By switching to triplets, you definitely helped that cause, because now there's that much more motion. You might want to think about, though, whether this passage would have been better written in 12/8. I mean, unless you're deliberately trying to get this B flat in the melody. Sorry, I'm at letter A. Unless you're deliberately trying to get these eighth notes in the melody to not line up with the triplets, because they're not going to. If that's the effect you want, then by all means do this. But I wonder if you had just written it in 12/8, da 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 dum bum, is, maybe more, maybe would have been more to the point. I don't know. I will say, when you write these piano triplets here, that same thing that I mentioned before about the hand moving, you'd want to be a little careful. I feel like, without actually going over to my piano and trying this out, I feel like you're making me work harder in the left hand than is necessary for the effect you want. That if this line were made simpler, where I could just arpeggiate and move my fingers slowly up and down, or with a minimum of crossing over for the high note, I feel like maybe this triplet part could be simplified, both hand position wise and mentally. So I don't have to keep track of where all the changes of direction are, but just establish a pattern and keep it going. All right, so what happens from here on out, though, are new sections, new pieces of the puzzle, key changes and so forth. But not at the key change yet. I guess, did I miss a key change already? Or just haven't gotten there yet? Just haven't gotten there yet. That's right, and here's where it goes back into 4. Measure 31. Yeah, measure 31 here. This chord here is a lovely chord, F flat, A flat, B flat, right? But you also have an E flat in it here. So it's kind of like an E major 7, flat 5, or sharp 11. It's a beautiful chord. It's sort of this passing chord that leads to that E flat. You could sort of maybe a little bit talk about it as if it were an augmented sixth chord in classical terms, but it's not quite that. I will say that this C here is probably unnecessarily dissonant against it. That C, so I'm at measure 31, that maybe there's a little too much action here. That the F flat, A flat, B flat is already, a really interesting little cluster. Stick the E flat on top of it, now it's quite biting, and then the C just makes it maybe a little too much. So I would consider replacing that C with a note that's already in the chord, or at least a note that's less dissonant against it. But actually, I'd probably just replace it with an E flat. Yeah, it stands out a little less that way, but it's a beautiful chord. Love the chord. So the modulations that you have going on are really nice. They're often using like a common tone type of technique, where you hold the D here. We're still in the old key of E flat, and we're still in the key of E flat, although we've introduced this A natural here. So here I'm at measure 39, and so it's hinting there's a modulation coming, but the D in the melody was the leading tone. And then it becomes scale degree 5 in the new key of G. So that's called a common tone modulation when you do that. You have a note in the melody that serves a function in the old key, and then you just hold that melody while everything changes out from underneath it. It's a beautiful technique, and you do that for other modulations as well. You do it really nicely coming out of that section. You sort of temporarily move to D, and And that D sharp is like I mean, it's like you're moving as if you're going to go to E, and this D sharp is like the leading tone in E, but then instead it becomes the 1 in E flat. So it's a beautiful use of a common tone, a note that made sense in one key, seemed like it was going one place, and is going somewhere else. So that's really one of the strengths of this piece, is the way you're using these common tones to set up the modulations. If I'm not mistaken, there might have been one other example of that sort of thing. Well, yeah, going into D flat at the end, but I'll save that. But let me just check on chat, see if there's anything else. Okay, good. So, yeah,
Mark, I'd like to make a comment. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
I can,
Mark?
and I will try to translate for you.
Mark?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a through composed piece. But at letter C, it appears to repeat the beginning, but that's because the words are in essence repeated. It is believed that this scripture passage was originally two separate chapters, but they were combined together, and so it gave opportunity to repeat the beginning, but it's really different. So it's really through composed with a little bit of return to the beginning.
All right, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So I tried yet again another little experiment to see if I can get the voice echo to not happen, but probably I didn't. So what Dean was saying, if people couldn't hear, and please remind me, I am going to just do this right now. Turn my screen share back on. Okay, so what Dean was saying, if you couldn't really make it out, was that what happens at letter C is a return to the original theme. Right, this is the original theme from the beginning, and so he was making the point that that's the way it is in the actual scripture, that line repeats, and there was a theory that maybe there were two separate verses that had been, or two separate poems, or whatever we want to call them, that got joined together. I think that's how I would summarize what Dean was saying. What I will say about that is it's really great. It's unity. That was one of the points that I was going to mention, to be able to reuse melodic material, even as you're changing sections and so forth. So it's great that the lyrics gave you that opportunity. What I would say about that is I feel like the original statement was a single voice, or at least a single section, so a small group of singers. And then when it comes back at letter C, it's now the singers, all of them together in octaves. And what I would say is that effect is not as impressive in MuseScore as it will be with the actual choir. In other words, that section didn't sound as much bigger than the original section as it will with real people. So with real people, that actually can be very effective. In fact, there's a very surprising effect that happens where you might think that expanding into multiple part harmony makes a choir sound bigger, but it doesn't always. Often unisons in octaves are the way to make a choir sound the biggest. It's just an acoustic fact of life, the way the voices reinforce each other. And that's often the case, that when you write this way, unison or in octaves, you can get a choir to sound really big. So that's probably going to be really, really effective in that sense. Now, I have just a few other comments that I want to talk about here. There's at letter B, yeah, wait a minute, letter B, did I miss? Yeah, letter B, the going into the triplets is also really nice, and the nice simple piano accompaniment, very effective. And this passage to me, so I want to make another point because I didn't like actually study to see if this is the case, but I think I'm going to skip to the very end. Somehow those passages are related to me. And Dean, I don't know if that was a conscious choice, but your use of voicings, the types of harmonies and voicings that are happening here make this end part feel quite related in some way that I can't actually pin down to what was happening there here. I don't. Yeah, I don't know that there's anything specifically related. I can just say it feels related. And that's important. So I'm going to contrast that with what happens in this really wonderful contrapuntal section that comes up at letter E. This section here. That's a really nice section. All the back and forth, the upper voices versus the lower voices, and how and the call and response and the lyrics. This is also going to sound really wonderful. But this is one of those things where I didn't feel like there was anything specific that connected this to anything that had happened before. And that's okay. It's okay to introduce surprises. But I loved how somehow that section at the end, even though I didn't really hear anything exactly, even though I'd never heard anything exactly like Measure 77, it somehow felt related to me to what was happening at letter B. I would love it if there had been the same sort of thing with where letter E felt more related in some sneaky way to something that had come before. And the closest I can think is the use of these 16th note patterns in the piano part. We get that bum pattern in the piano part. That's the kind of thing that does it. Whether that does it enough to make me as happy as I would want to be, I don't know. It'd be something to think about, whether there'd be some way of sneaking one of those 16th note patterns like that somewhere into the voices earlier, unless the goal really is, no, complete change of pace, complete, absolute new thing. But I feel like most of the time you want to have done something to presage it a little bit. And that's the one spot where I felt like there was a change that wasn't presaged in any way there. And that ending, I'm just going to skip right over the ending because that's really my last comment. It's just glorious. And I wonder, the harmonies and the voicings there are just beautiful. And you've done this thing that looked like it was going to be a modulation to D flat. Oh yeah, that was the other common tone modulation. It felt like going from the key of E flat, coming out of here, now suddenly we're in D flat, right? And so again, it was a common tone. We kept the F left over from when we were in the key of E flat. We kept that F in the melody, but now it's the third in the key of D flat. And I was thinking, well, why didn't you change key signature? Clearly, you've changed to D flat. Well, no, you haven't. You only did it for like 4 bars because that D flat is now going to function as that 7th chord to get back to the E flat chord. And now you have this sort of back and forth motion between a kind of a E flat sound and a D flat sound. I feel like that section there at the very end is like a fanfare type of sound that I've heard before, arranged for brass. And here's where, Dean, I'm going to ask you if you had a specific reference for like where you got these voicings, where you got that harmonic motion, that whole rhythmic thing. Everything about that feels familiar to me, like it comes from Aaron Copland or someone else in some way that I can't pin down. So, Dean, is that were you
Yeah.
thinking anything in particular when you wrote that?
Uh, uh, no, I sort of thought I discovered that sound, and then I thought that sounds something from Aaron Copland, just like you said.
Yeah,
It
doesn't it?
sounds very Aaron Coplandish, but I loved it, and so I decided, I'm keeping it. He doesn't have a copyright on that particular voicing or chord, and it just seemed I wanted to be very declaratory, so to speak, declamation. Uh,
I think Billy the Kid maybe is
Great as
where
the
it
Holy
comes.
One of Israel,
Maybe.
and
Yeah, and it's beautiful.
maybe
I mean,
so, Billy the Kid.
it's gonna be a
Yeah.
dramatic finish for sure. So at least one person said the a couple people are saying the audio is better. So I'll tell you what I think I've done. Um, what I because I want to say it out loud so other people can remind me is I'm looking at when Dean was talking, it was showing up in the mixer under screen share because his audio was coming through my computer's screen share, which I didn't want. And there's maybe a way to prevent it. But what I'm done here is I've muted my screen share. Now it means when I go to play back, I'm not going to hear. You're not going to hear the playback. So I'm going to have to remember to go back and forth now. Mute the screen share when Dean talks. Unmute him when he's not. It's going to be a little bit of a pain, but at least we have that ability. So I'm glad for a moment at least that we have better sound on it. So Dean, I just did a whole lot of talking. So while we have working sound, and before we wrap up, echoes the back. It's when we're both talking. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Oh well. I'm going to shut up then, and Dean, I'm going to let you, just respond in any way to the things I've been saying, and then we'll find a way to wrap up.
Okay, well, I think they've been very helpful. Pardon me. A lot of the time you were cutting out, so I'm going to have to go back and watch the replay to get a lot of your comments. But I caught some of them, and I've taken some notes, and I really appreciate that. Um, uh, yeah, I'm very pleased that you took the time to feature this and tear it apart. I don't feel torn. I certainly feel like you've given me some good ideas to move forward with. So I guess that's about all I have to say. I'm just wondering if there's anything. Oh, I might say that uh, when I find a text that I like, I will often try to find what the music is within the text. What is the rhythm? When I speak the text, is my voice going up or is it going down? And so I try to follow that as I set it to music. I look for lyrics that flow. Because there's a lot of stuff that doesn't flow. So I probably will never set a lot of things to music. um, Also, one other thing, when it comes to scriptures, I usually use the King James version, but sometimes I have to look at other versions to maybe change out some words. For instance, and you don't have to look at this, but in bar 56, the word in the King James version is doings. Well, I substituted the word works because I needed a one syllable word, not a two syllable word to fit there, I felt. So, I have to make a few changes here and there. Um, so that's basically that's basically it, I think. I cannot see the uh, the comments that people are making in chat, so unfortunately, I can't. I can't respond to them, but I appreciate. I will hopefully see them in the playback when I look at it again, and but because I would like to see what other comments were made.
Okay, so hopefully when I'm speaking, we don't have echo again. But yeah, thank you so much, Dean. And yeah, Dean, the comments are just fabulous. People are just, other than, oh no, there's echo. Other than that, it's been, wow, this is amazing. The music sounds great. I hope it gets performed. Anything we can do to help it get performed. Um, so uh, so yeah, that's basically you just got a lot of really nice comments as far as that goes. One thing about the translation, yeah, I would say
Thank you.
I'm accustomed to that, totally accustomed to that myself. In when I played in churches, and I would be, often you'd play two different settings of the same verse, and you would see that they had translated them differently, obviously exactly for that reason. Like for instance, the example that comes up so obviously for me is Prayer of Saint Francis. It was a big hit in the Catholic Church, at least. Make me a channel of your peace. Well, the text that's taken from really says, "Make me an
Mm-hmm.
instrument of your peace." But who wants to sing that? So channel just was a way better translation for the
Instrument.
purpose of the lyric.
Instrument.
Yeah. So, but channel sound. Who wants to sing instrument of your piece? It doesn't flow as nicely as the word channel. So the pop hit version of it is a channel of your piece, and it that was I think a conscious decision made for the same reason. So yeah, Dean. So let us know if it gets if you do get this to be performed, because I think we would love to hear it. If it can get recorded and you can get a video up of it, that would be so much the better. It would be a fantastic thing.
Well,
Okay.
thank you. Okay. Thank you.
All right. So what I think I'm going to do is I think we are going to wrap up here and take advantage of the fact that we do at least got to talk at the end. Understandably, I will continue to do some research and see if I can figure out ways of managing the audio on these better. But I'm happy I at least found a way if I keep managing what I'm muting and so forth. So hopefully that's at least something. So I want to thank everyone again for being here. Before I totally sign off, I do want to remind people about the community site, and that you can, that's where you can post your works, for comments, and, people will comment on each other's work. You get great feedback from people. I'll chime in where I can. And I will continue to feature works from, just ones that I think are good examples of whatever I feel like talking about in a given day. Assuming that I work out the technical issues, I want to do this sort of format again where I bring someone on to talk. I will be offering that specifically to people who are all access members. And so I will again promote that to, promote that you might want to, kick in and become a member and get access to stuff like that, get access to my harmony course, my counterpoint course, MuseScore course, etc. But in any case, just everyone's welcome to be posting your music, and we'll all try to learn from each other. So I'm going to play some music and thank everyone for being here. And especially thank you, Dean, for being here. Thanks for being the guinea pig for this. Thanks for the absolutely marvelous music that we got to talk about. This has been the Music Masterclass. Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore. We do this every Thursday. So just tune in, subscribe to my newsletter if you haven't already. Go to masterymusescore.com. If you're not already on the mailing list, hit the subscribe to newsletter button, and I'll always be keeping you informed about things. Again, thanks everyone for being here. Thank you, Dean. And until next time, we'll see you